Quran. This week, we explore the miraculous alignment of the chapter and verse numbers of the Quran. With me to explain this is Dr. Shabir Ali. Dr. Shabir, can you tell us about how these, the chapters, there's 114 chapters in the Quran, and how they're aligned with their verse numbers to produce some mathematical miracles?
Yeah, what has been found is that even though the number of verses within a chapter seem to be assigned at random, meaning that they do not seem to follow any predictable pattern. Like the first surah is short, it has only 7 verses. The next surah or chapter is long, it's got 286 verses. And generally there seems to be like a descending order, but it's not uniform. The shortest chapter of the Quran does not occur at the very end, it's the 108th. So people have puzzled about what really is the wisdom behind the ordering of the chapters like this. Why doesn't the longest chapter come first, and why doesn't the shortest one go at the end? Why does it appear that there is a descending length as we go from first to last, more generally? But it's not uniform. So the secret that has been discovered about this arrangement is that there are 2 numbers associated with each chapter, a chapter number and the number of verses within the chapter. When we see the 2 numbers, we see 2 distinct numbers, and that's all we see. But somebody who's very good with numbers, looking at the 2, will immediately see a 3rd number, which is the total of the 2. Now, if you think of the total of the 2 numbers, then it's either an even number or an odd number. That's natural, of course. Interestingly enough, for the 114 chapters, the results that we get from adding up the 2 numbers from each chapter turns out to be 57 even numbers and 57 odd numbers. Now, to have this fine balance is surprising. But it shouldn't be so unusual, because naturally, among natural numbers from 1 to number n, regardless how big that number is, you're going to basically have like an even split between even numbers and odd numbers. But what makes this surprising is that if we were just dealing with the chapter numbers 1 to 114, obviously half of those are even numbers and half of those are odd numbers. But when we come to the number of verses within the chapter, we don't expect this result to be there, because we see that the first chapter is an even number of verses. The second chapter has the first chapter has an odd number of verses, 7 verses. Second chapter has an even number of verses. Third chapter has an even number of verses. Fourth chapter has an even number of verses again. So it doesn't seem to follow any predictable pattern. Yet when we consider the totals, the chapter number plus the number of verses within the chapter, and we look at the results from those totals, of the 114 results, we have an even split. 57 are even numbers and 57 are odd numbers.
That's very fascinating. And who discovered this?
Well, a certain writer by the name of Abdullah Julhoum, he wrote in Arabic, and a copy of his Arabic book was sent to me from the Noon Center for Quranic Studies. And the Noon Center for Quranic Studies in Palestine has also commented about this and explained the results in English. And that explanation is found in a document that's printable from their website. And we also have a document that we have prepared using this information after having studied it in detail and confirming that this is so. That document is available from us for free, entitled The Quran as a Mathematical Miracle.
Now there's another aspect to this as well, which relates to the total number of verses in the Quran. Is that right?
Yes. Now let's start with where we have left off and go a little deeper. Now we have taken the 2 numbers associated with each chapter and we've added them up, and we have the total. So we have 114 totals coming from these 114 chapters, and we said that half of those totals are 57 of them are even numbers, 57 of them are odd numbers. What is interesting is that if we take the 57 even numbers and we add them all together, we get a grand total which is the same number as the number of verses in the entire Quran, 6,236. So how did that coincidence occur? And on the other hand, if we take the 57 odd numbers and we add them up, we get the total of all of the chapter numbers of the entire Quran.
Of 1 plus 2 all the way to
All-
114.
to 114. So that's another coincidence. The total there is 6,555. So how do we get this elegant result that from 57 chapters, we get the total, that is the total number of verses of the entire Quran, and from 57 other chapters, we get the total, which is the total of all of the chapter numbers of the entire Quran. So this is an unusual result. And to see how, if this is just a fluke, I decided to test this against some other books. And I haven't seen anyone done this before, but I did this of my own initiative. I needed a book that has chapter numbers and verse numbers. A lot of books have chapter numbers, but no verses, unless we're dealing like with a book of poetry. And not having access to poetry books, I picked the one book that has chapter number and verse numbers, of which I have several versions and several copies, the Holy Bible. And I used the New American Standard Bible, NASB, a copy of which was generously given to me by a good friend, and Dr. James White. My key interest was in those books which Muslims believe to hold some divine revelation, the Torah, the Psalms, and the Gospels. The Torah comprises 5 books, the Psalms 1 book with 150 chapters, and the Gospels are 4 books. So 10 books altogether I did the study with. And I found that in each case, in all of these 10 books, the pattern which I discovered in the Quran did not exist here. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with these books, because there's no reason why a book has to have this kind of correspondence between chapter numbers and number of verses within the chapters. But the fact that this is found in the Quran and not in those 10 books which I examined confirms that this is a rare occurrence, and that rare occurrence needs an explanation.
And what is that explanation?
Well, Muslims and Christians, when we debate atheists, we say that when we observe patterns in the natural world, that shows that there is a designer, and the designer is God.
So I started the conversation with, crazy market, isn't it? I had no idea what else to start with, but he was reading the Wall Street Journal, so I figured, So anyway, we start, conversing, and he starts telling me about his family, and, I was like, so you go to church? And he goes, yeah, I go to church once a week, whatever. And he tells me he's Catholic, and this and that, and how he doesn't like it, because they're always asking for money. But anyway, So one thing leads to another. So I say, I always had a question. I wondered something. I wondered, so you guys believe that Jesus is God's son because there's no father, right? So you call him a heavenly father. So that's what makes him God's son, because there was no man. It was just a woman, Mary, and she has this baby. So there's one parent missing, right? One human parent is missing. I would think Adam is twice as miraculous. The first human being is twice as miraculous. Why? Because both parents are missing. No mom and no dad. So, if you think he's the son of God because there's no dad, you should think like Adam is has twice the right to be considered son of God. Wouldn't Adam say, hey, wait a second. I don't get it. What do you guys think about that? And he goes, well, I guess that's the mystery of faith. And I've heard that answer many times, actually. They can't answer that question. Except that they can say, that's just a mystery, I suppose. The Quran is very clear. See, it just cuts to the heart of the matter. Now, this is one ayah in which both Jesus and Adam have been mentioned in the same ayah, in the same breath. They've been talked about. The example of Isa, the example of Jesus, is just like the example of Adam as far as God is concerned. And Allah. Okay. Interesting note. The Quran mentions Jesus 25 times. The Quran mentions Isa alayhi salam 25 times. The Quran mentions Adam 25 times. Over the course of 23 years and the 600 pages of revelation that we have, the example of Jesus as far as God's concerned is just like the example of Adam. Isn't that what he said? The example of Isa is just like the example of Adam. The two prophets that have been mentioned the same number of times, 25 each, are who? Isa and Adam. And then what's even crazier is this is in the third surah. This is in the third surah. How many times did I say it's been mentioned? 25 times. If you go before this surah, before the third surah, before Ali Imran, you have Fatiha, and then you have Baqarah, and then you have some parts of Ali Imran, and you have this ayah. Up until this point, Isa has been mentioned 6 times. This is the 7th time. This is the 7th time that his name has come up. And if you go from the beginning up until this point, this is also the 7th time Adam is mentioned. And if you go from here to the rest of the Quran, both of them are going to be mentioned 18 times each. The example of Isa, as far as Allah is concerned, no doubt, is just like the example of Adam.
Surah Kauthar is the shortest surah in the Quran. The unique thing about Surah Kauthar in relation to the number 10 is that this entire surah is made up of 10 words. Not only that, but also the first verse in this surah is made up of 10 different letters. The second verse is also made up of 10 different letters. And the third verse is also made up of 10 different letters.
I'm going to talk to you about the biggest surah of the Quran. That's what I'm going to talk to you about first. The biggest surah of the Quran. Now what is it, folks? Yeah, this is surah number 2. Surah number 2. And surah number 2 is made up of how many? I'm not going to say verses. I'm going to give you something new for your vocabulary. Instead of, you know we say verses of the Bible? Right? Or sentences? Instead of verses, what term are we going to use? Ayahs. You can even use the English plural. It's okay. It's not sacrilegious. Ayahs. So you have surahs, which is the Quranic version of what? Chapter. And you have ayahs, A-Y-A-H-S, A-Y-A-H-S, ayahs, which literally means a miraculous sign, by the way. The word ayah means a miraculous sign. So we say each surah is composed of a set of miraculous signs. We don't call them verses, okay? Now, this surah, this biggest surah, number 2, is made up of how many ayahs? 286. This is the biggest one in the Quran. It's made up of 286. I'm not going to say verses. What am I going to say again? Just so I know you know, ayahs. Okay? 286 ayahs. Somewhere in this surah, the ayah occurs. I'll recite the Arabic first and roughly translate after. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Thus we made you a middle nation. One of the utterances in this surah that's found in here is, thus we made you a middle nation. Now what's the Arabic word for middle? Wasat. The Arabic word is wasat. You don't have to know that. But know that this statement, this declaration occurs in this surah. Now the question is, once again, I'm reminding you, this surah, was it written or was it delivered in the form of speech? Speech. And also, as a historical comment, it wasn't delivered at once. It took almost 10 years to be revealed. So this one surah was coming piecemeal. And while it was coming down, pieces of other surahs were also being revealed. And the messenger would instruct his companions, these ayahs belong to this surah and those ayahs belong to that surah. But when the whole thing is said and done, Baqarah, the second surah, is made up of 286. And in ayah number, listen to this carefully now, in ayah number 143, the Lord says, we made you a middle nation. How many ayahs in this surah again? 286. And where does He call us a middle nation? In the middle. In the middle. Now how do you, I understand if you're going to do this in writing. I understand if you're going to do this in writing. How do you do this in speech? And by the way, at the time, there was no concept of ayah number. Like I told you, ayahs, there are 286 ayahs, and there's 143 ayahs. At the time, they never said, haven't you read ayah 12 of chapter 35? They didn't talk like that. They just recited the ayah. They didn't have this number scheme. When did this number scheme become part of the Quran? When the Quran was finally put into book form. But the generation we're talking about doesn't have a book before them. They don't have that before them. They're memorizing this, and it's completely and entirely an oral tradition. So that's one small example.
Let us go to chapter 74, verse number 30. عليها 19. Over it is 19. Mathematics is the only true universal language. In anything in life, they say, show me the numbers, show me the numbers. Well, we're going to show you some numbers. And God willing, you're going to see the truth. And by the mean of facts, if we are sincere, we should see what the truth is. In mathematics, 1 and 9, we're talking about number 19 now, 1 and 9 are like A and Z in English. 0 independently has no value. So 1 is the first, 9 is the last. As if to say the first and the last, the Alpha and Omega. Could 19 perhaps be God's mathematical signature? If God wanted to leave a signature so that we humans would recognize it one day, what language would he choose? Obviously, mathematics is the only common language between all of us, and we all understand. And what's so incredible, in different style of writing, when it comes to numerals, numbers, only 1 and 9 are the same. If I write in Arabic 1 through 9, you see that the only two numbers that you can read, those who don't know Arabic, is going to be 1 and 9. So let's see if this could perhaps be God's signature.
The Quran turned out to have a unique signature. The Basmallah consists of 19 letters. The Basmallah appears 114 times in the Quran, a multiple of 19, which is 19 times 6. The count of chapters in the Quran is a multiple of 19, which is again 19 times 6. And the sum of chapter numbers in the Quran is also a multiple of 19, which is 19 times 345. Another unique thing about the number 19 in the Quran is that the word 19 in chapter 74 starts off as the 361st letter in the chapter. Now 361 is the square of the number 19.
Holy Mysteries, in theaters in September 2009. Mecca has been ordered as Kauthar direction, convention place for billions of Muslims, and as the holy center of Islam. Soon, you will witness the scientific proof of unbelievable mysteries that have remained hidden in the holy city, Mecca, for thousands of years. The constant, superior design number of mathematics, 1.618. The Creator has always used the very same number in numerous events in the universe. In our heart pulses, the aspect ratio of DNA spiral, and the special design of the universe, which is named as dodecahedron, and the leaf array rules of plants, which is named as phyllotaxy, in the snowflakes, crystals, in the spiral structure of numerous galaxies. The Creator has used the same number, the number of golden mean, 1.618. It is observed that this ratio is applied to the pyramids of Egypt, like it was applied to various famous architectural works. Famous astronomer Kepler defines this number as a precious treasury. As the vision expert Dr. Stephen Markout was proved as a result of his 25-year-long study that human faces and bodies designed pursuant to this ratio are accepted as beautiful by every single person in the world. If the aspect ratio of any form is 1.618, then this form is convenient to golden mean. Perfect design. So, where is the golden mean point of the Earth? The proportion of distance between Mecca and the North Pole to the distance between Mecca and the South Pole is exactly 1.618, the golden mean. Moreover, the proportion of the distance between the South Pole and the city of Mecca to the distance between both poles is again 1.618. The miracle is not over yet. The golden mean point of the Earth, according to common location language of mankind, graticule map, is in the city of Mecca. The proportion of eastern elongation to the western elongation, which are determined as solstice line from Mecca, is again 1.618. Moreover, as shown in the figure, the proportion of western elongation of Mecca to the solstice line to the perimeter of the Earth on this very latitude is surprisingly the golden mean, 1.618. The golden mean point of the Earth, for all mapping systems, even though they vary by a few kilometers, is always within the city borders of Mecca, within the holy region that includes Kaabah. You can measure very sensitively the distance between any 2 points with the help of Google Earth's ruler feature. If you wish, you can verify the correctness of the given ratios by calculating latitude and longitude with a simple calculator. The Phematrix program is an American program that is used to show golden mean of pictures and paintings. If we accept the graticule map of the Earth as an alive painting whose depth never ends and open it in this program, we will find out that the golden mean point of the Earth is the city of Mecca. With respect to positive longitude and latitude values and being on the lands, not the sea, the only golden mean point of the Earth is Mecca. Miracles continue. The golden mean miracle in the Mecca verse of the Quran. There is one unique verse in the Quran that includes Mecca word and an expression that tells there are clear evidences within the city which will give belief to humanity. The relation between the city of Mecca and the golden mean is clearly engraved in the Ali Imran Surah, 96th verse. The total number of all letters of this verse is 47. Calculating the golden mean of letter total, we find out that the word of Mecca is expressed by 47 divided by 1.618 equals 29. There are 29 letters from the beginning of the verse till the word Mecca. Just like it is in the world map. If only one single word or letter was missing, this ratio could never be constituted. Without any impediment, we have conducted the very same process that we conducted on the Earth map and witnessed the glorious coherence of letter numbers that reveals the relation of Mecca and the golden mean. All this shows that the creator of the Earth and mathematics is the same one God. Beggar description that created Kaabah, holy region, and the Quran. He reminds whole humanity that knowing the future and common languages of humanity, he gave clues for them. A newer invention on the relation between the golden mean, Mecca, Kaabah, and the Quran becomes revealed in each single day.
According to modern scientific calculations, the age of the universe is estimated to be 13.8 billion years, and the age of the Earth is estimated to be 4.54 billion years. Now, on dividing 13.8 billion years of the universe in 6 parts or 6 days, we get an answer of 2.3 billion years. Now, on adding any 2 parts or days, we get an almost precise approximation of the age of the Earth.